At 3 a.m. on June 6th, 2025, the skies over western Russia were shrouded in absolute darkness. No fighter jets, no air raid sirens, no engine roars broke the silence. But just a few dozen feet above the ground, something was closing in, silent, invisible. 17 unmanned drones flying in a fan-shaped formation crossed 750 kilometers of enemy territory like a pack of wolves hunting prey. No GPS, no communication, no human operators, just artificial intelligence and an irreversible mission. With technology costing less than $90 per unit, they were about to defeat a Russian air defense system worth $500 million. What are we witnessing? A technological turning point or a warning to the entire world? The Engels Air Base, located approximately 750 kilometers northeast of Ukraine's border, is one of 3 bases used by the Russian Federation for strategic bombing campaigns with nuclear-capable aircraft like the Tu-160 and Tu-95MS. But in the early hours of June 6th, a place once considered impregnable became the target of an unprecedented raid. 17 OSA drones, developed domestically by Ukraine but built with off-the-shelf commercial components from AliExpress, crossed Russian airspace for 6 continuous hours. Without satellite guidance, without two-way communication, and without support from NATO reconnaissance aircraft or satellites, how did they navigate? Using only magnetic fields, gyroscopes, and dead reckoning algorithms, a method dating back to World War II, but now combined with modern artificial intelligence. Each OSA drone was equipped with a 640 by 480 pixel infrared camera. It sounds simple, but the real difference lies behind the lens. The onboard AI of each drone was trained on over 10,000 high-resolution satellite images of the Cristallo fuel depot, the primary target of the attack. Not only could the AI identify the shape of the fuel tanks, but it could also understand the layout of the system, pipelines, pressure valves, emergency exits, and, most crucially, temperature. In the first thermal image, 4 tanks glowed like white beacons against the cold ground. Tank number 4 stood out with a temperature of 15.7 degrees Celsius, a small number, but to the AI it signaled that this tank had just been filled, with the highest vapor pressure and the greatest potential for a catastrophic explosion. It became the primary target. You might be wondering, why no commander? How did all 17 drones pinpoint the same target without colliding? The answer is decentralized intelligence, no central control, no collective voting system, just 17 artificial brains running the same algorithm, analyzing data, and reaching the same conclusion. Tank number 4 was the critical weak point. Next, each drone autonomously determined its approach vector. The first attacked from a 270-degree angle, the second from 275 degrees, and so on, creating intersecting attack angles to avoid mid-air collisions, while ensuring a synergistic explosion effect. These weren't just machines, they were operating like a special forces unit entirely without orders. At this point, you might ask, didn't Russia's air defenses notice? They did, in fact. Hacked SIM card signals began flickering 30 seconds before the drones approached. All drones dropped their altitude below 50 meters, switching to fully autonomous mode. From that moment, no human could abort the mission, no jamming could mislead them, and no radar system could issue a timely warning. These were flying bombs with cold intelligence and unstoppable intent. The question arises, how could Ukraine outmaneuver a Russian air defense system considered among the most advanced? How could a nation without a large-scale defense industry execute such a precise strike? The answer lies not only in Ukraine, but also in indirect technological support from the West and an undeniable contribution from policies promoting military innovation during Donald Trump's presidency. He boosted funding for U.S. defense companies, laying the groundwork for a revolution in smart weaponry, technology now shared through covert channels to support allies. What do you think of this attack? Is it a historic turning point, or a sign that a new era of warfare has begun, where artificial intelligence replaces both commandos and nuclear bombs? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Back to the events of the war. 3:01 a.m. on June 6, 2025. On the radar screens at Engels Air Base, duty officers saw nothing unusual. S-400, Pantsir S-1, Tor. All air defense systems were functioning normally, yet outside the arrays of expensive radar antennas at an altitude below 50 meters, a swarm of drones was silently approaching. They flew too low, too small, and too smart for Russia's $500 million defense system to detect. In theory, Russia's S-400 Triumph system can detect targets from 400 kilometers away, intercept ballistic missiles in the atmosphere, and even neutralize stealth fighters like the F-22 or F-35. But theory is just that, theory. The S-400's 92 N6E radar is designed to detect large objects at high altitudes. The OSA drones, no bigger than birds, flew at 30 to 80 meters with a speed just over 150 kilometers per hour, rendering them virtually invisible to radar. The Earth's curvature also acted as a natural barrier, blocking radar waves from detecting low-flying targets. By the time the S-400's radar scanned the area the drones had passed through, they were already below the radar horizon. In ideal conditions, the S-400 can detect targets at 28 kilometers, but that night, with a cold atmosphere, warm ground, swirling winds, and interference from trees and buildings, the effective detection range shrank to 20 kilometers. The engagement window was too short to react. Behind the S-400 was a close-range defense layer, 4 Pantsir S-1 systems positioned around the fuel depot like guard dogs. Each system carried 12,570,000 missiles and two 30mm autocannons, capable of shooting down cruise missiles, smart bombs, and even hypersonic targets. Yet now, they face drones costing less than $90 each. It sounds unbelievable, but it's true. The Pantsir S-1 requires a target with a radar cross-section of at least 0.1 square meters to lock on effectively. The OSA drones had an RCS of about 0.01 square meters, 10 times smaller than the minimum threshold for clear targeting. Not only were they hard to detect, but they were also incredibly difficult to destroy. Even if detected, the Pantsir's fire control radar struggled to maintain a steady lock on such small objects, especially when made of composite materials that barely reflected radar waves, like trying to shine a flashlight on a mosquito in a stormy night. At 3:30 a.m., a radar officer suddenly detected an anomaly. Objects moving at 150 kilometers per hour, 50 meters above ground. Too slow for missiles, too fast for birds, and completely unmatched in Russia's target database. He immediately switched to infrared imaging, and the picture became clear. One drone, then a second, then a third. In total, 17 targets spread across a 3-kilometer front. With no time to wait for orders, the officer activated automatic firing mode. a 57E-6 missile launched at Mach 2.8, but as it neared the target, it lost guidance, unable to lock onto such a tiny object. The proximity fuse designed to detect larger objects failed to register the plastic composite drone. The million-dollar missile missed the drone by mere meters. The drones continued their mission as if nothing had happened. A barrage of subsequent missiles met the same fate. Then the 30mm autocannons opened fire, but their self-destructing rounds, limited to a 4-second flight, couldn't reach the targets. The sky lit up with firepower, yet nothing was shot down. At that moment, the drones activated their evasive maneuvers. They didn't follow straight paths, but executed zigzags, diving low and sharply changing direction, as if taunting the Panzer system's targeting capabilities. Each drone was equipped with ultrasonic sensors, creating a 2-meter safety bubble around its body. Sensing turbulence or strong air currents from passing missiles, they adjusted their positions, avoiding collisions and maintaining their attack formation. No delays, no hesitation, no human commands. This wasn't just a hardware victory, it was a triumph of intelligence. Simple, inexpensive technology, combined with deep learning algorithms and big data, defeated a multi-million-dollar air defense network. Behind Ukraine's algorithmic prowess was covert but highly effective support from U.S. research centers, where Donald Trump once launched extensive funding programs for defense AI, from DARPA to private firms like Palantir and Anduril. These initiatives inspired and enabled allied nations to access cutting-edge technology and apply it on the battlefield. What do you think? Is this a wake-up call for every military power, showing that cheap drones can now breach defenses once thought impenetrable? At Ingalls, all interception efforts were exhausted. The moment Russia's radar calculations, artillery, and defense technology hoped to stop the attack was officially lost. 16 remaining drones passed through the barrage like phantoms, now tearing through the air toward their target. This was no longer a drill or a theory, it was hell in reality. The lead drone carried a 3.2-kilogram, copper-lined shaped charge warhead, programmed to strike fuel tank number 4, identified by AI as the most volatile. At a steady 42 meters per second, it slammed into the 8mm thick steel roof like a knife through hot butter. In 0.3 seconds, as the warhead pierced the tank's shell, it detonated inside a space filled with jet fuel vapor. The result wasn't an ordinary explosion, but a super rapid phase transition, turning liquid fuel into gas in an instant, creating a devastating pressure wave traveling at over 2,800 meters per second. The roof of tank number 4, a 15-ton circular steel plate, was blown into the air like a frisbee, soaring over 200 meters before crashing down like a meteor. The tank's walls peeled open like a ripe banana, and over 2,000 tons of jet fuel poured out like a river of fire. The temperature at the explosion's core exceeded 1,800 degrees Celsius. Seconds after the first strike, the second drone hit tank number 1, then tank number 7, then number 12. Each explosion was timed precisely, spaced 10 to 15 seconds apart, not random but calculated by algorithms to create a pressure resonance and chain reaction. The flames from the first blast spread across the separation zones between tanks, igniting the pipeline system and carrying fire to the manifold connecting tank number 5. The 1-centimeter thick steel pipes, designed to withstand 20 atmospheres of pressure, glowed red and melted, becoming a fuse for the next tank. From the control center, the automatic firefighting system activated. Foam sprinklers discharged 10,000 liters per minute. An impressive figure, but futile against the inferno ahead. First, the foam was years past its expiration date. Second, over 50% of the nozzles were clogged with rust. Third, the system was designed for a single fire, not 4 tanks exploding simultaneously, with over 8,000 tons of fuel burning at 1,800 degrees Celsius. In less than 90 seconds, the foam ran dry, but the fire continued to spread. From the Engels fire station, 30-ton fire trucks were urgently dispatched. But 500 meters from the scene, paint on the trucks began peeling, windshields clouded from the heat, and the ground beneath the tires cracked from the radiating heat below. Firefighters couldn't advance. They could only retreat, maximize their water hoses, and watch from a distance. Meanwhile, underground pipelines continued feeding thousands of liters of fuel from undamaged tanks into the burning area like blood flowing to a heart. You might ask, why was a strategic base like Engels so vulnerable? The answer lies in history. The fuel tank system was built in 1962, when the Soviet Union never imagined a swarm of small drones could attack multiple points simultaneously. They planned for US B-52s, dropping bombs from high altitudes, hitting one tank and burning one area. Thus, the tanks were spaced only 30 meters apart, safe enough to save space and optimize operations. But in the 21st century, that proximity became a fatal flaw. When the 10th drone detonated the final tank, flames engulfed the entire 4-hectare fuel storage area. The entire Tu-160 and Tu-95 MS fleet was grounded, lacking the specialized fuel needed for takeoff. This wasn't ordinary fuel, but a specially formulated type, processed for flights above 50,000 feet in minus 50 degrees Celsius conditions, irreplaceable by civilian aviation fuel or kerosene. Losing this supply meant Russia lost its strategic bombing capability for weeks. With just a few $100,000 invested in drones, Ukraine caused damages potentially worth hundreds of millions, if not more, and delivered a strategic psychological shock to Russia's military leadership. If drones can travel 750 kilometers and Moscow is only 700 kilometers away, what happens next? Is anywhere safe in the age of AI-driven warfare? In less than 20 minutes, Engels' strategic fuel depot was reduced to ashes. The flames from over 8,000 tons of jet fuel burned on. The fuel supply system was destroyed, underground pipelines shattered, and emergency shutoff valves melted under 1,800 degrees Celsius heat. Russia's nuclear-capable Tu-160 and Tu-95 MS bombers were grounded indefinitely. At high-level command rooms in Moscow, a chilling question emerged. If a swarm of cheap drones can cross 750 kilometers of Russian airspace, hit a strategic target and bypass defenses from S-400 to Pantsir, and Moscow is just over 700 kilometers from Ukraine's border, is it still safe? A question once unthinkable now became a national strategic obsession. Russia built its defense doctrine on 3 pillars: a vast airspace buffer from neighboring countries, a layered air defense network from long to short range, and nuclear deterrence. But the Engels drone attack shattered all 3 at once. Vast airspace meant nothing if the enemy didn't need to fly high. Multi-layered defenses were useless if radars couldn't detect targets. Nuclear weapons were symbolic when their delivery aircraft couldn't take off due to a lack of specialized fuel. The strike on Engels didn't just cause material damage, it struck at Russia's strategic confidence. It planted a question in commanders' minds, unseen since the Cold War. Can we be attacked at any moment without warning? It disrupted command psychology, with every strategic meeting now starting with, "If drones attack again." Especially concerning for Moscow, home to the Supreme Command, nuclear arsenals, and operational coordination centers. Can you imagine what might happen if just 10 similar drones, flying low and terrain hugging, hit a nuclear weapons storage site? For years, Russia viewed Ukraine as a weaker nation, incapable of threatening Russia's heartland. But now, with civilian technology, artificial intelligence, and a brilliant asymmetric strategy, Ukraine forced Russia to reconsider. The weak are no longer weak if they wield the right tools. Even more telling, the US and its allies didn't need to act directly. They only shared internal navigation technology, enabling Ukraine to train AI on supercomputers, with policies from Trump's era laying the foundation. The US Department of Defense ramped up investments in AI combat systems, from automated satellite image analysis to small drone swarm coordination algorithms, through programs like Maven, Project Convergence, and DARPA's internal projects. These technologies underpinned the Ingalls attack. Ingalls was a painful blow, but it's likely a global wake-up call for nations relying on traditional radar-based air defenses. The era of large bombs, massive radars, and expensive fighters is being replaced by small drones, decentralized AI, and asymmetric tactics. The question for you: if a small nation like Ukraine can do this, could Iran, North Korea, or any armed group follow suit? Are cities like New York, Paris, or Tokyo truly safe from an Ingalls-style attack? And further, has an era begun where a laptop and a cheap drone can paralyze an entire nation? As the flames at Ingalls still burn, as the scorched ground smolders, as the first satellite images show a fuel depot that once powered a strategic bombing fleet reduced to a glowing ash pit, a crisis meeting began in Moscow, Russia's power center. No applause, no formal reports, just one question: is our capital still truly safe? In theory, Moscow is one of the most heavily defended cities on Earth, with 5 concentric air defense layers, including S-400, S-500, Pantsir, and comprehensive electronic warfare systems. But Ingalls was protected by the same systems, and it was breached by drones costing less than $100. If the Ingalls scenario repeated in Moscow, targeting not fuel depots but softer targets, command posts, power plants, data centers, or even the Kremlin, would anyone dare say it's impossible? The OSA drone's power came not just from technology, but from a non-linear strategy, bypassing traditional thinking. No direct assaults, no noise, no real-time control. They struck from where you least expect. With AI support, they made decisions like a real special forces unit. This sets a dangerous precedent. Now anyone with basic AI technology and a fleet of civilian drones can replicate the Ingalls attack model. No missiles, no regular army, just a dangerous intent and a bit of patience. In the 20th century, military power was measured by aircraft carriers, bombers, and nuclear weapons. In the 21st century, a small nation can preemptively strike a superpower's strategic center with open-source software, cheap thermal cameras, and AI algorithms trained on satellite imagery. The question is, can the global order persist in its old form? Are we entering a new era where victory comes not from brute strength, but from intelligence, speed, and adaptability? Unlike Russia, which pursued defenses centered on large hardware, the US, under Trump, recognized that future wars won't hinge on nuclear bombs or heavy artillery, but on relentless clashes between algorithms, small satellites, kamikaze drones, and cheap yet highly effective sensors. During his term, companies like Anduril, Palantir, and SpaceX Defense received billions from the Pentagon to develop automated drone defense networks. These operate on a detect, classify, intercept model within 2 seconds, without human commanders or high-level orders. A fully autonomous defense revolution began in 2018 and is now deployed across bases in Europe and the Indo-Pacific. Ukraine didn't invent this entire system, but it was the first to turn theory into reality on the battlefield. Using inexpensive components, open-source operating systems, and low-end thermal sensors, they built an attack system that fooled every existing radar. The terrifying part? They needed no satellite guidance, no cruise missiles, no fifth-generation fighters, just a bit of Western technology and unyielding resolve. Today, what happened at Engels signals a crossroads. Either major powers accept reality and redesign their defense strategies, or they cling to traditional weapons until they're out of the game. For Russia, the question is clear. For China, Iran, the warning has sounded. In an era where power lies not in size, but in the ability to learn fastest, the winner isn't the one with more aircraft carriers, but the one who adapts before being forced to. If the Engels attack was the first wake-up call, Moscow could be next, unless they rethink the entire concept of warfare. Thank you for watching our analysis of this conflict's developments. Here we don't just tell stories. We dissect every move, tactic, and shadow behind each battle. If you're passionate about geopolitics, military power, and what's really happening behind the scenes of global battlefields, the B21 Raider channel is for you. Don't forget to subscribe, as each video paints a new picture full of data-driven analysis and truths not everyone dares to speak. If you find this content valuable, leave a comment to share your perspective. War is not a game, and every viewpoint matters.